Hello, folks. Hope you're doing well. It's 20 past 12 in the afternoon on the 2nd of July 2020. But this would be a sort of part two of rant against the offended generation. This is not so much a rant, more of a sort of looking at the issue from a more calmer perspective. But also from a perspective of trying to explain why I was saying that doing what these people are doing is a sin. And why these people are going to be judged by God and probably will end up going to hell. Probably. Not a certainty, but with the way they are and the way they think, it's dangerous, to say that. It's very dangerous. I'll go into that. Yeah, it's I stand by really what I said in that, because there is this generation, and we've learnt a lot about it. There were comedians years ago doing sketches about it, where someone of this age group goes into a job and immediately gets everyone fired because they say something, or maybe don't say something, that person then finds offensive, and they then go after them. So let's look at it from the point of view of, why is it a sin? You're standing in judgment over people, right? You're standing as judge and jury over people. Not only do you judge that person has done wrong, you decide the punishment that person should be suffering as a result of them doing wrong, as a result of them offending you. So you take offence, and you have to then be judge and jury. But there's only one judge for people, one judge for people's sins, and that's God. So you are now saying that you are equal to God, that you are able to judge these people. You are able to judge that this is what they've done, and this is how they should pay for it. So when you face God, God will use that judgment that you use against you. Now, it's often the case that I've done videos before about saying, if you say to someone, the worst thing you have done is who you are, and therefore rightly you should be judged on that, then that will happen when you face your judgment. God will use the same judgment with you. But with these people, it's far worse. And the chances that they're going to escape hell for eternity is far less. Far less. Because in them, they're not even saying the worst thing you've done. They're saying that thing that I found offensive, that thing you said that I found offensive. So God would simply say to that person, oh, well, you said something then that I found offensive. That's it. You spend eternity in hell. Bye-bye. But as I say, repenting is a case that you have to admit that you are wrong. Right? Now, my experience with these sort of people, and generally my understanding of these sort of people, is that they find it very difficult, to say the least, to admit that they are less than perfect. Because the thing of it is, if you think that you are less than perfect, a lot less than perfect, you can't stand in judgment on other people. You have to create this understanding that you are more or less perfect, right? You are clean, and you are judging these dirty people. I'm not judging these people. I'm not saying that this is the case for these people. As I say, there are some people of this age group who are lovely human beings. Yeah. And even of this generation of these people that get offended so easily, some of them will repent. Some of them will have the understanding and wisdom as they grow up, and they will repent. But you have to look at it. If someone is 26, 27, 28, 29, and they still haven't grown up, they're still thinking as a child, you've offended me, therefore you have to pay. If they're still thinking as a child at that age, are they likely to grow up? Or are they likely to stay in that sort of mindset, especially if society allows them to? If society doesn't jump on them from a great height and force them to grow up, force them to realize that, okay, I best not do that anymore, that's bad for me, they're going to just continue in it. I mean, you think about it, these people haven't even learned that if something happens, if someone says something or someone does something that offends you, you have a number of options. You can get revenge on that person, you can try and hurt them, or you can actually maybe try and talk to the person to solve the issue. Maybe there's a misunderstanding, maybe there's a reason for what the person did or said that you don't understand. See, generations in past used to do that. They used to go and talk to people. If they see someone's tweet that someone made 20, 30 years ago, or something someone said on a TV program or whatever, they would say, okay, it doesn't mean that person still thinks that way. And actually, if we're going to judge that person based on that, let's find out, do they still think that way? If they don't, they were young, they made a mistake, that's fine. They were young, they made a mistake. Are they still doing that now? Are they still making racist jokes? Are they still making sexist jokes? Are they still doing these things when they comment to people? Because if they are, then okay, that's still you. So we can look at that and we can say that's out of order, you're out of order in that. But if that's only what you did 20, 30 years ago, then let it go. It's what you did then, it's not now. Yeah, Weinstein was an example of somebody who was taking advantage massively of the power he had. He was wrong to do that. Now, most of that probably happened 20, 30 years ago. If it's still happening now, if he was still doing it, 5 or 6 years ago, then yeah, go after him. Absolutely. And he probably was. Don't know. It's quite possible he was still doing it because he'd been doing it for so long that maybe he was still doing it. I mean, he's being charged with certain offences of that nature. But let's understand that, generally speaking, the women that agreed to have sex for a part in a movie or whatever, they agreed. Yeah. Yes, he was wrong to abuse his power. However, he did. This is where it gets tricky, you see. He did, to a certain degree, pressure the women, yes. But they still agreed. They could have walked away. They could have said, right, okay, we're not going to do this. I respect myself too much. I'm not going to do this. But they didn't. They wanted the role. They wanted the money that comes with it and the fame and everything. They were willing to give that up for that. So if you're talking about feminists, they were working against the feminist movement themselves, the women, really. Because they were saying, I'm willing to trade this for all of that. At that time, that's what they were doing. Some of them, at least. And so, be careful how you judge, even someone like him. Even the women. Yeah. I can't look at any particular woman at that time who was taken advantage of by Mr. Weinstein and say that they did that, because I don't know. I wasn't there. I can't look at Mr. Weinstein and say that he pushed or pressured women to do stuff they really didn't want to do, because, again, I wasn't there. If I wasn't there, then I should have nothing to do with the judgment on that at all. Even if I was there, I wasn't in his head, I wasn't in their heads. And even if what I experienced was him doing that to me, which it wouldn't be because I'm male, but if I was female, then that might be the case. It doesn't mean he did the same to all those other people. But the way that these offended generation people behave is that they lump it all together. Someone says something similar, well, that's the same thing. Put that there. That's the same thing. Put that there. Oh, this man's a complete monster. I don't know, is he? I don't know. And put it this way, oh, Jesus. I mean, look at it from this perspective. We have known for years and years and years and years and years and years and years that women use sex to get what they want. Right? Not all women, but a lot of women use sex, certainly to a certain degree. Some to a massive degree, some to a certain degree. But they use sex to get what they want. You know, the common joke is woman wants a new kitchen and she'll agree to do the thing that her husband wants to do, even though she doesn't really normally do it, if he gets her a new kitchen. You know, so she's getting paid a new kitchen to do that sexual act to her husband, which really is prostitution. Right? It really is that. I mean, it's between a husband and a wife, so it's not really, but it's a case where women use sex. So a man wanting to use a woman in that way, there's no difference. Not really. The only difference is the man forcing women to do something they don't want to do? Did Mr. Weinstein force women to do stuff they didn't want to do? If yes, then, yeah, if he raped the women, then of course. He should be charged, he should be found guilty, because that's a crime. You know, if the understanding of the day was for women, you know, he's going to want to do that if you really want that big role. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, sort of thing. Then, if the women say yes to that, then that was the understanding of the day. Is it right? No, of course it's not right. It ain't good. It's not the way that people should be behaving, but it's the reality of the situation. Of those days, that was the understanding. Now, I wouldn't go into that. Yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, it was men as well as women, you know, having sex with men. It wasn't just women. It was men being asked to do that sort of stuff as well. I mean, it's commonly been understood that, or believed, whether rightly or wrongly, that the Illuminati helps certain artists to get to the top. And to do that, these artists have to, you know, allow the members of the group, the Illuminati group, to do whatever they want to them. I said, whether that's true or not, I don't know. I have no idea. Is it possible? Yeah. Is it absolutely true? No. But is it possible? Yeah. And is that right? No. But if these artists, you know, agree to it and they want to be up the top, then what can you? Yeah, that's something that they're going to have to realise at some point in time was wrong for them to do. But they're not selling their soul to the devil to get that level of fame, that level of celebrity. And that's up to them. If they want to do that, that's up to them. In the end, it's their life. They have to choose. So judging the people that take advantage of that is wrong. You've got to understand the situation, and you've got to, if you're going to judge one, judge the other. Don't just judge him, judge the hers as well. But deal with potential conflicts. If you haven't learned to deal with things before they get to a conflict, then I'm sorry, but you're a child. Simple. You've not learned to deal with things before they get to a point where there's going to be some sort of aggravation between you and a neighbour, then that's a problem. If your response to something your neighbour or a work colleague or someone else does, 1 second, lay down there, Mollie, then you need to grow up. Because if your idea as a way to respond to that sort of stuff is to be malicious, to be nasty in some way, then you're a child. Simple. And employers, you need to understand, if you're employing someone of this generation and they have to deal with people, you need to really consider whether you've got the right person for the job here. Because if in their private lives they deal with offence in this way, they're going to start doing that in the work, and they're going to ruin your business. Because it's impossible. If that's really who you are, you can't stop being that. You can for a time, but then put it this way, the more you get away with doing that in your private life, the more you're likely to start doing it in your work life. You go into someone's home, that person says something or does something that you find offensive, and then you wage some sort of war against that person. Right? If you can do that in your private life, in your non-work life, then it's going to bleed into your work life. Especially when you get cocky and you think that there are no consequences to it. It's going to come into your work life. If you've got people that are that immature that they can't deal with confrontation in any other way than to want to hurt the person, then don't allow them near people. Not in a work situation. Not all those people are going to take it into the work environment. Some will. And if you're a boss, then your company is in danger. That's the reality of the situation, because if people learn that this is the way to think, this is the way to do things, and they're supported in that by family or friends or people on Facebook or Twitter or wherever, then they're going to do it in more places in their life. That's the reality. They're going to do it in more places in their life because they've learned that this is the way to do things. This is the way to respond to such things. Now, that is pretty obvious. How people would think that that would be a stretch, I don't know. If you get used to a certain way of behaving, then that way of behaving is going to come in. Like, for example, if you've got someone who is racist at home, they're going to eventually make racist comments at work, right? That's understood. We know that already. It's exactly the same with people that get offended and want some sort of vengeance on the person that offended them. They're going to get offended by what people say in the places they go into. That's going to happen because people aren't perfect. People are flawed. They make mistakes. They say things wrong. They do things wrong. That's people, right? And you can't scan the people you're going to go to see before you go to see them to make sure they're perfect. But if you get used to being judge and jury in your home life or in your online life, you're going to do that in your work life as well. It's going to bleed in. And when it does, as a business, you deserve to be sued and closed down forever. You deserve that. Because if you're hiring a child, mentally a child, someone who's never grown up in that sort of way, then it's your own fault. It really is. If you get faced with someone of that sort of age group, between 20 and 30, you better do a blinking good interview. You better find out about these people. You really do. Keep an eye on their social network pages. Keep an eye on that stuff, because that's where they're going to let it go. They're going to let it go there as well as in the private. And if they let it go in the private and the public online, then it's going to come into their work. That's the reality. It is going to come in, because it's the same with racism or sexism. If it's there at home and online, it's going to come into the work environment. Simple. So it's a problem. Yeah, the generation is a problem, and they've got a problem themselves. If they think this way, as I said earlier, if they think this way, then they are saying that they can be judged and jury. They're appointing themselves as like a god. And yeah, they see themselves. The people I've been dealing with, you can see that to a certain degree, they see themselves as little gods. Oh yeah. So having a conversation with such people is bloody difficult, to say the least. You know, chances that it's not going to end up in some sort of frustration and enragement is slim. So, yeah, best to avoid. Best really to say, right, have nothing to do with the people, because, you know, it's childish conversations, childish understandings. You said something that hurt me, even though it shouldn't have hurt you. You know, because they want to make it so personal. You did a tweet 20 years ago. They see it and they take it so personally, even though it wasn't about them. It wasn't about them at all. Oh, but they take it so personally. You know, it's like we've had this situation recently where statues have been pulled down and thrown in rivers. And again, the people putting the statues down, oh, they took it so personally, didn't they? That these people were involved in slavery. A lot of these people weren't even related to slaves. And they try and link it to Nazi Germany. That if there was a statue of Hitler and Jewish people walk past, they'd rightly be offended and want that taken down. Yeah, Nazi Germany was, and the execution of Jews was 60 years ago, 60, 70, 80 years ago now. Yeah, slavery in that sense was 100, 200 years ago. Not really the same. Yeah, we're talking about the second, maybe third generation of Jews since that. Yeah, the second generation. I mean, there's still people alive who were in the internment camps. Not many now. There's no one alive now who came out of slavery. As far as I know. I mean, when I say come out of slavery, I mean come out of that slavery. There are still elements of slavery now. And those people who are so bothered about slavery don't seem to be that bothered about the elements of slavery that are still happening now, but aren't white versus black. They might be black and black or white and white. They don't care. Because they can't put a racial connotation onto it. Even though they scream about the slavery part. The fact that slavery is still happening now, people being enslaved. I mean, we know that you have the situation now, and it's awful, terrible situation. They've made some movies about this subject, but we know what happens, that girls from Russia and from Eastern Europe get brought over in the belief that they're going to have work in an Eastern European country, and they don't. They get put into the sex trade. They get drugged up and hooked on drugs, and they're scared to leave. They can't get out because if they try and get out and they try and go to the authorities, all the other girls are going to suffer, and they're probably told that all the girls will be killed so that the people responsible don't get in trouble. That's slavery. That's enforced prostitution. So it's rape, and it's slavery. It's kidnapping of people. And all these people so bothered about slavery don't care less about that in any way, shape or form. And of course, a lot of this offended generation, they've got on board with the Black Lives Matter. But they're not really offended about all these girls that are taken from Eastern Europe and forced into the sex business. That doesn't seem to offend them that much, does it really? You don't see that much of an outcry about how that needs to be tackled, that needs to be dealt with. You don't have a mass of marches and protests against that, demanding that the governments all over the world deal with that, crack down on these gangs that are doing that. Yep. Even though it's people suffering, it's people's lives being destroyed, it's basically it's women being raped on a continual basis. And this offended generation don't care. They don't care. As I say, it's one of these things where they pick the silliest little things to be offended about, and that to me is one of the most offensive things about them. Yeah, I wouldn't mind if they were offended about these gangs that are bringing these women across. Yeah, I'd be on board with that. Great, yeah. If they were offended about police abuse of all human beings, I'd be like, yeah, okay. If they were looking to protect the rights of all people, great. If they were looking to protect children in every way, or to look at, well, for example, there's areas of abuse that aren't ever dealt with. Mental abuse, emotional abuse. Mental abuse and emotional abuse are just as damaging as physical and sexual. Just as damaging. You can easily destroy a child with mental emotional abuse. Why isn't anything ever done about that? Why are the people not offended by the fact that nothing's ever done about that? But they're not. But that's why they pick things like, something you've said, or, something easy, something where it's not, they don't really have to do anything. They don't really have to get a load of people together and then go protesting or marching. Their offence is personal to them. They have the right to be offended by this stupid little thing because it offended them. And it's like, oh, Jesus Christ. If that's the most important thing to you, then great, you have at it. You have at it. If that's what you want to make your life about, go for it. Seriously, go for it. I'm not going to try and stop you. You go for it. You're wasting your life over trivial shit, basically. And you want to do that? Okay. This is what you want to spend your life doing? Great. But as I say, I really hope that you'll all be infertile. I really hope that that'll be the case. Because if you think that way, you should never inflict that way of thinking upon children. I mean, who inflicted that way of thinking upon you was massively in the wrong, whether it's parents, whether it's a school, whether it's a society. But people, you should never have children where you can inflict that way of thinking onto children. That's just wrong. If you have a child, from a Christian point of view, if you have a child, then God has given you that child to raise in his image, in his ways. If you're teaching children to attack people, if they offend you, you couldn't really be going much further away from God's ways. So, yeah, I hope that God makes you all infertile. I think that's one way of trying to make sure we don't have another generation of offended people who make it their life's work to just be a pain in the arse to people who have made a mistake. Because that's what they are. That's all they are. They're not worth anything more than that. Yeah, if you say something wrong or you do something wrong, then at some point in time, one of these offended generation people could be on your case. That's all they are. That's all they offer to society. You know, free speech is under threat because of these people. What a wonderful addition to society you are. You know, that in the end, what you're given to society is that free speech is no longer free speech. That comedy is something that's dead because of you. Because of people like you, comedy is dead. Free speech has gone. You know, people now are holding their prejudices in a lot more until they explode. That's what we're going to have. Until people just explode in a rage or a tyrant of abuse, and then, of course, they're then afraid that somebody would have heard them and that their life will be cancelled because of it. Wonderful. What a wonderful part of humanity you are. I mean, you really have to say, with these people, there doesn't seem to be any humanity in them. Not really. Lucy, will you come and lay down? You're making all that noise. Lay down, Bubs. I'll take you out in a second. Yeah, it is about time for me to take the doggies out. They did have some breakfast this morning, so they've been resting since their breakfast. So better do that now. This version is a lot shorter than the last. that's good. Well, not a lot, only 6 minutes actually. Well, there you go. I may have gone over stuff that I said in the last one. But as I say, if you think this way, you're in danger. You need to change the way you're thinking, because on your day of judgment, you've got virtually no chance at all. So if you're doing this because there's no heaven, no hell, or you believe there isn't, then if there's no heaven, no hell, there's no judgment anyway. So what are you doing trying to judge people? If there's no heaven or hell, then it doesn't matter if the people you're judging cut your heads off. There's no judgment. There's no hell for them to go to for killing you, is it? So it doesn't matter, does it? None of this crap matters if there's no heaven or hell. If there's a heaven or hell, then you are in danger, massively. The way you're judging other people, the way you are deciding punishment for other people, you are condemning yourself to an eternity in hell. That's the reality. That's a simple truth, and it really doesn't get any more simple than that. That's what you're doing. That's why what you're doing is stupid. I'm not saying you are stupid, but your behaviour is incredibly big and stupid. It's incredibly immature. You've not grown up. You've not learned how to deal with things that offend you. How to appropriately deal with stuff. Like every generation before you had to learn to deal with. Seems like the generation after you has learned to deal with it. It's your generation that for some reason was brought up not being taught to deal with this stuff. Why? I don't know. But you need to learn. Because you need to be able to let offence go. Shout and scream, get it out, let it go. It's gone now, you've dealt with it. You shouted, screamed, you dealt with it, it's gone. That's it. If you've got to have some sort of petty revenge every time you get offended, well then your life is going to be engulfed in this. As I say, that's why it's going to bleed into your work. Because it's who you are. So, your choice, your life, you want to deal with this, okay. But I'm hoping that society starts to realise pretty quickly how toxic you are. As a generation, you are incredibly toxic. You are nasty. And the sooner society realises this and deals with you, the better. You take care. Anyone listening to this, take care, God bless, and I will speak to you soon. Bye-bye.